Hello, good evening, everyone, and welcome to our first lecture for week 1, and this is DES244 package design. So I hope you guys are really excited about this class. This is a lot of fun. We really start digging into some start using a lot of our design fundamental skills that you've been learning and start getting into some really cool creative things. So tonight, what we're going to do is we're going to kind of hit on a lot of the information to prepare you for your project, this module. So how it works for this class is we're going to be building every week on the assignment. So what we do for this week, for week 1, is we're going to build on it for week 2, week 3, and then week 4, we're going to have our final design. But what's really important, we're not going to just focus on how to do the assignment during our lectures, both of our lectures. We're going to really spend some time to learn about the tools you're going to be using for package design. And when I say tools, I don't mean Photoshop or Illustrator, but really the design fundamentals: color, shape, typography, how all of those elements are used to really communicate a mood to your target audience. And that's what we're going to talk about tonight, is color and typography. Tomorrow night, our Wednesday night lecture, we're going to go step by step through the assignment. But again, really understanding these fundamentals and how these design elements work is going to ultimately really help your design, your package design, be the strongest it can be. And that's what we're striving for. Is we want to create something in this class that you guys are going to be able to put in your portfolio, and then not just use for package design, but to use for all of your projects and any professional work that you're going to be doing. Because when we do talk about these design elements, shape, texture, color, typography, hierarchy, they really apply to everything that you design as a graphic designer. So we really want to, again, start digging really deep into this module and in this class, so that they become your go-to tools on not just a package design for this class, but for every project that you work on, whether it's in school, again, or whether you're working as a professional designer. Okay, so hopefully you guys are really excited. This is one of my favorite classes to teach because, again, we don't focus too much on just the software, on the Adobe tools. We're really, really focusing on design and how you use design to communicate. And that's ultimately what we all are trying to do. You know, that's what we do as designers. It doesn't always matter the tools we use. We can use Photoshop, we can use InDesign, we can use Illustrator, we can use some tool that I don't even mention, okay? Regardless of the software, what we do and how we take these elements is really our job and what makes us skilled. So tonight we're going to go over a couple of announcements, and then we're going to dig into, again, kind of the lecture portion of this week, where we talk about package design and what is it, and kind of the different roles that designers can play when it comes to package design. We're going to really talk about color and how it relates to communicating in logos and in packaging. Typography, we're going to look a little bit at Adobe Typekit, so that you guys know where you can go to actually look at, to find some other fonts that you might want to use for your projects. And then we're going to talk a little bit about mood boards tonight. And then we're going to focus on your mood board tomorrow solely, because that is your assignment for this week. Sorry, there goes my little dog. Okay, so again, just a couple of housekeeping things. What I really want to start off with is making sure to remind everyone to pay attention to details. And as you start moving through your classes and your modules here at IU, you're really going to find that there's more than one part to your assignments. And this is no different. So you really want to make sure that you're reading your prompts and your instructions, making sure that everything that is required, not just for the discussion, but for your assignment, you hit. And I'm going to just show this really quick. I'm going to come in here. Here's our class. And when we look at our assignment, and this is why, again, it's important to really read through, is at the beginning of every assignment, you have your learning objectives. And it talks about what you're striving to achieve this week. And there's a little bit of background. Then we get down to our prompt. And you'll see there's multiple steps in your week one project. You're going to pick a package. You're going to pick what you want to design. You're going to download some information about it. You're going to create your mood board, and then you're also going to write a 50-word document. Again, we're going to go into this really in depth tomorrow, but again, coming back to why it's important to pay attention to the details is if you scroll all the way down to the bottom of the page for all your assignments and the discussions and your assessments, you're going to see what is called the rubric. And the rubric is how your assignment is graded. So you'll see here, you have submission directions that if you followed it, you have all these different ratings, and it's totally worth 6 points. Then you have mechanics, and here, you know, what the goal is for your mechanics, and then you have different points for how well you achieve it. And we go down to your, you know, did you follow the directions? How is your design rationale? And then you hit all of the learning objectives that were covered at the beginning. There were 4, and you'll see there's 1, 2, 3, 4 learning objectives that you're ultimately graded on. So I always like to point this out because if you're trying to, you know, really understand how you're graded on an assignment and where you might, you know, make sure you get the most points, look at your rubric. And another reason I really like to show this is people sometimes think, well, what if I turn in something late? Well, the good thing is this module, again, there are no point deductions for late submissions. So you don't have to worry about being deducted any points for turning in something late this module. We understand this is like a crazy time, what's going on, and everybody's life has been completely changed, and we're not going to deduct points for being late. So even if you did turn in something late, that's only 6 points. So out of 120, if you turned it in late, and let's say you got 3 points taken off, you're still getting an A. So again, my point that I really want to try and make sure is a lot of times students can feel defeated if you get a little behind, if you're going to turn it, if something gets turned in late, maybe you're self-conscious about your writing, all of those things. And it really helps to see, well, okay, that's really not where the bulk of my grade is. The bulk of my grade is achieving my learning objectives down here. So just really keep those things in mind when you're doing your assignments. Also, you know, understanding that you do get graded on following the directions, okay? So I always like to, again, point this out so everyone understands how you're graded, because once I grade, you're going to be able to look in your rubric and you'll see where the points were taken off. And as we progress to your assignments, through your assignments each week, there's going to be a little bit more details that you have to pay attention to. So again, paying attention to the details is so important, not just in this class, but also when you are working as a professional designer. More, you know, every project starts with somebody handing you a design brief or a creative brief, an email, a conversation, people communicating to you what they need. And if you're not paying attention to those details and you're missing them, and they have to keep reminding you, Well, then they start kind of losing confidence. Like, well, wait, you know, I told them 3 times this is what I wanted, and maybe they're not hearing me. So again, not only is this great practice to get into while you're in school, but it's really setting you up for good, just kind of habits as a professional designer. Okay. So the next thing I want to hit on is communication. And this is a huge thing. Again, we understand, I understand, there's so much going on right now. And my goal is to do whatever I can to help you not just pass this class, but to also enjoy it. I mean, with all the stress that everybody has right now, a lot of times design is such a great outlet to just turn your mind off and be creative. So if you're having any problems, if you're having any roadblocks, if you know you're worried about something, just talk to me. Just let me know. That's what I'm here for. And I always like to tell students that don't stress yourself out for like a day on a problem when a quick email, a phone call, or a text to me, we can sort it out in 20 minutes, okay? Because that's what I'm here for. I'm here to make the class easier for you guys, all right? You are not expected to know everything. That's why you're in this class, is to learn these things. So just don't put all of that pressure on yourself. Again, that's what I'm here for, is to help you through this class. And again, take any stress that I can, because off your shoulders, because design is supposed to be fun and school should be fun. You know, that's when we're at our most creative, is when we're open. So again, if there's anything that I can help with, please don't ever be shy about communicating with me. Again, whether it's through email, a phone call, or a text, whatever you're the most comfortable doing, please just don't hesitate, okay? One note about resubmissions and late submissions. Again, there's no point deductions for late submissions this module. So don't worry if you're a couple days behind, you're not going to be deducted any points, okay, on your grade. If you turn in something and you're like, oh crap, you know, I see in the feedback where I could improve it, and you want to rework it and turn it in for a higher grade, you're absolutely allowed to do that. As long as you're willing to redo the work, I'm willing to grade it. So again, totally open to resubmissions all module long. And also I want to always, you know, encourage everybody that if you're working on your project and it's like Thursday and you want to get some feedback before you submit it, just email it to me. You know, that's something a lot of my students do, and I think it's great. You know, you don't have to turn something in and that's the first time you get the feedback. If, again, you're stuck on something and you're not sure, but you really want to work it out before the submission deadline or before you turn it in, just, you know, shoot me an email, say, hey, Michelle, could you take a look at this? I'm feeling a little stuck. That's what I'm here for. And the last thing, again, just for the announcements, is here's my number. It's 912-755-0197. So I encourage everyone to write it down on a piece of paper and put it in your purse, put it in your wallet, or what have you, so that if something happens, if you lose your phone or if your computer dies, you're not relying on having to have those things to get a hold of me. You can say, hey, you know, I had such and such come up, and again, you're not stressed because maybe you're not at your computer or maybe your internet went down. Texting is the quickest way to get a hold of me. I'm East Coast time. So the first thing I ask is nothing after 10 p.m. at night, and that's East Coast time. So that would be 9 Central, 8 Mountain, and 7 Pacific. I do work Monday through Friday from 8 to 5, so I can't always answer my phone, but I can typically get back to you within a couple of hours. I can usually respond to text pretty quick, so that's why I say texting is the quickest way. And Email is usually the slowest. While during the week I have my email open while I'm working, I don't always have it open constantly on the weekends. I typically just check it in the morning and in the evening. So if it's, the afternoon and you have a question, the likelihood if it's on the weekend that I would get your email immediately is not as high. So just send me a text. That's why I give you the number. Okay. All right. So that's it for our announcements. We're going to go ahead and dig into our lecture for tonight. And like I said, I know it's not always fun to just hear me talk. So I'll try and get us through this nice and quick so that we can start spending time on the assignment this week. But I want to emphasize that it is really important to not just only, understand what we're going to go through in the lecture tonight, but to also read through your course media, because this class really is about how you use your design elements. It's not so much about how you use Photoshop or Illustrator or any of those things. It's how you are going to design. So let's go ahead and get started. What is package design? And when we think about it, really, regardless of the product, everything that we interact with always has some type of package that we buy as consumers. So packaging can really range from anything from a box that your headphones come in to the bag that you're using, that you get from McDonald's, to food, clothing, furniture, home goods, anything, again, wine, sodas, beverages, all of that, anything that is holding a product is going to be is package design. So it's a very large industry that you have a lot of opportunities to kind of start designing some pretty cool things. And these are just a few examples that I wanted to show you because, again, a lot of times when we hear package design, we may just think about a box like this one over here that's maybe something is inside. But package design is also the labels that are on these bottles here. It's the bottle that this skincare item line comes in. So it really, again, it encompasses a huge range of things. And you'll see that when you're going to pick what you're going to design for this, this module. Okay. Some more examples of just packaging: the Kleenex boxes, things, paint tools, that you get at the hardware store. Down here, little kits that you may get at, any kind of gift store, party store, anything like that. Everything is encompassed in package design. So it's not really just one thing. Again, we don't want you to think of it as just a box that you open and put something in it. That's a box. The packaging can really be anything, okay? That, again, is holding, showcasing, anything that's communicating to an audience, to a consumer about a product. Now, what do package designers do? And you might be wondering that, because you're going to see, we're going to do a lot of different things in this class that you may have not been doing in some of your other classes. And that's really because there are some fundamental steps in package design that you work through when you're doing a concept or when you're doing a final design, a package design. And one of those is our concept designs. And those really range from anything like a sketch on a piece of paper to a full-blown like 3D mock-up of something. So you're going to be doing some sketching in this class, and that's really, again, a concept design. Package designers also do branding. Sometimes a brand is entirely about one product. So you may work with a client on their logos and their stylings and how all of that carries not just, again, in a logo, but through their packaging. And you'll see some of the examples we kind of dig into tonight, that branding is really encompasses an entire company. And I know it's like brand. So when it's, again, a company that may be specifically working with just one item, a package designer can work with them on their logo, their style guides, and the packaging for their product that they sell. Package designers also work in just the graphic design field. Maybe your job is going to just be to, design elements for the actual packaging. There's also template design, where you may be designing a lot of different styles for one box. So think about something like pasta, and you can stand in the pasta aisle at the grocery store. And Barilla is the one I always think about. Their blue boxes. All of their boxes look similar, but there's a little difference between the spaghetti box and the penne box and the macaroni box. So those, you may design a template that brand can then use across their entire family of packaging. So these are kind of some of the more common things that package designers get into. And I really wanted to highlight them because we're going to be working on a lot of this in this class. But there's also a ton more. Just like with anything as a graphic designer, I'm sure you guys are starting to learn that now. You've been in school for a little while, and you're seeing that graphic design is such a big industry, and it really encompasses a ton of stuff. And package design is no different. Okay. So when we talk about a package design project, one of the first steps that you're always going to do is research. You're going to research the industry. You're going to research your audience. You're going to research your competitors. We're going to dig a little bit into that for this class, but I really want to point it out because you want to start thinking, maybe up until this point, you've really been designing based off of things that you're like, well, that looks good, or you've been given certain parameters. But as you move along in your courses here at IU, and as you start working as a professional designer, it's going to really fall on your plate to do some research when you get a project. And I know a lot of designers don't always realize that. And I like to point it out because I'm a UX designer in my job. And I will say that probably 70% of every project I work on is researching. It's researching, doing sketching, concepts, and mock-ups. It's only that final little piece, 20 to 30% of a project, where I'm actually sitting down and designing something. So understanding who your customer is, who your user is, who you're competing against, and why they're doing it. If someone has an existing package design, what works about that package? What doesn't work? What have their consumers responded well to? Is there any negative feedback for things that you might need to address in the new design? Okay, all of this again is research, and that's where every single project starts, especially for packaging, is with the research. Then you start getting into concepts and mock-ups and kind of troubleshooting. You're trying to solve a problem and put all of the puzzle pieces together. And throughout that entire process, you're working with your clients to see, well, what do they think here? What do you guys think about this? And the reason we do that is because printing a package is really expensive. So you want to make sure that by the time you get to printing, that the client 100% agrees with the design. You know, you've tested it out. You know that it's going to work with the consumers. You know what it's going to look like on the box, and everything is clear. Because once you start printing a package, if there's a mistake, if anyone starts second guessing something, you're talking about a lot of money to redo it. Okay. So that's why these steps are so important, especially in package design, because that final product that you're going to be delivering, which is the printed package, is a very expensive piece. Okay. So it's always important, again, to work through your research, your concepts, your mock-ups, communicate that along the way so that when you get to that final design, you know it's good, it is ready for the printer, and you know exactly what it's going to look like. Okay. All right, so the first thing we want to talk about tonight is, or I guess the second, we talked about package design first, is color. And understanding the role of color, not just again in packaging, but in design in general, is maybe you pick a color because you're like, oh, I like blue, so I want this to be blue. Or this is the sky, so I want to make the sky blue. Well, there's so much more to color than just those types of reasons why we pick them as designers. Our goal as designers is never to pick something because it's what we like. We want to make design decisions because it's what we know is going to communicate the right message. And color is one of the most powerful tools we can use as designers to communicate a message to our users, to our audience, to consumers, to whomever it may be that we're designing for. You guys, I know you've taken color theory by now, so you're familiar with the color wheel. And we really want to spend some time this week thinking about what do those colors actually mean. And you break it down and you can see, you know, up here we have orange. And orange is typically a really optimistic color. It's joyful, it's fearless, it's certain and sparkly. When you look at the brands that use orange as their logo, you can see they're really fun brands. Nickelodeon, Fanta, the NBA, you know, things that people are trying to really give a lot of energy to. And we can go around the entire color wheel and you can see why you might choose the color red. You know, before you were studying color and design in school, you might have chosen red because you think it's angry. Well, actually, in the world of design, red is a very active, fresh, daring color. Coca-Cola, Pinterest, Toyota, Puma, you know, all of those are really exciting brands that people engage with. And that's what we're trying to help you understand when we're thinking about package design, is one of the first things that people are going to react to is the color that something is. And all of those colors actually have like psychological meanings behind them. So when you sit down and you start thinking about what you're going to design for your packaging, think about a reliable brand package. You know, is my company reliable? Is it fun? Is the brand successful, cheerful? You want to hone in on those key words for the brand that you're designing the package for, or for the product you're designing the package for. And say, okay, if I want this to be a really cheerful design, maybe I should explore yellow, you know, because I know that yellow is a very cheerful color when it comes to packaging and branding. So we're really trying to help you start taking that next step. You know, you guys have understood the relationship with colors when You have, you know, your secondary and your tertiary and your complementary colors. But now we're trying to help you understand that those colors actually have a meaning too. This is just, again, kind of a quick refresh because I think most everyone has taken color theory by now. Complementary colors are across the color wheel from each other. Contrasting colors are usually 3 steps away. So if it was blue, I'd go 1, 2, 3, and the red would be the contrasting color. And harmonious colors are 2 steps away. So again, if I was trying to come up with a color scheme that was very harmonious, I would want to, let's say if I wanted to start with blue, I'd count 1, 2, and this red purple would be a harmonious color that I could then match it with. So again, we're not gonna, you know, dig too much into the color wheel. And a lot of times what we're trying to understand, and this is what you're gonna do a little bit in your mood board this week, is oftentimes there can be primary color palettes and secondary color palettes. A lot, you might hear it as like a primary palette or a foundation palette and an accent palette. When we're doing packaging design, that's going to be one of our biggest friends is how we use accent colors to draw attention to certain pieces of information or to try and de-emphasize certain pieces of information. Because a lot of times a package, we don't have a lot of space to deal with. So really picking the colors and using them wisely can kind of help make sure that we're drawing attention to the pieces that we want to draw attention to and de-emphasize maybe the pieces that, well, we got to have them on there and they're important, but we don't want it to be the focus of the design. Okay. I want to share with you guys a quick little video about color.
Color. It plays a vital role in design and everyday life. It can draw your eye to an image, evoke a certain mood or emotion, even communicate something important without using words at all. So how do we know which colors look good together and which ones don't? The answer is simple: color theory. Artists and designers have followed color theory for centuries, but anyone can learn more about it. It can help you feel confident in many different situations, whether it's choosing colors for a design or putting together the perfect outfit. All it takes is a little insight, and you'll be looking at color in a whole new way. Let's start at the beginning, the very beginning, with a refresher on the basics. Remember learning about primary and secondary colors in school? Then you already have some knowledge of color theory. Red and yellow make orange, yellow and blue make green, and blue and red make purple. If we mix these colors together, we get even more in-between shades, like red-orange and yellow-green. Altogether, they form what's called a color wheel. You can probably see where it gets its name. Now, let's take it one step further with hue, saturation, and value. These are terms you might never see in daily life, but they're the key to understanding more nuanced colors, like all those little paint chips at the home improvement store. Hue is the easiest one. It's basically just another word for color. Saturation refers to intensity. In other words, whether the color appears more subtle or more vibrant. Value has to do with how dark or light the color is, ranging from black to white. As you can see, this gives us many different shades, from a deep reddish brown to light pastel pink. So how do we put this all together to create professional-looking color schemes? There are actually tried and true formulas based on something called color harmony that can help. All you need is the color wheel. The easiest formula for harmony is monochromatic because it only uses one color or hue. Just pick a spot on the color wheel and use your knowledge of saturation and value to create variations. best thing about monochromatic color schemes is that they're guaranteed to match. An analogous color scheme uses colors that are next to each other on the wheel, like reds and oranges, or cooler colors like blues and greens. Don't be afraid to play with the palette and create your own unique interpretation. That's what these formulas really are, merely starting points to help guide and inspire you. Complementary colors are opposite each other on the wheel, for instance, blue and orange, or the classic red and green. To avoid complementary color schemes that are too simplistic, add some variety by introducing lighter, darker, or desaturated tones. A split complementary color scheme uses the colors on either side of the complement. This gives you the same level of contrast, but more colors to work with, and potentially more interesting results. A triadic color scheme uses 3 colors that are evenly spaced, forming a perfect triangle on the wheel. These combinations tend to be pretty striking, especially with primary or secondary colors, so be mindful when using them in your work. Quadratic color schemes form a rectangle on the wheel, using not 1 but 2 complementary color pairs. This formula works best if you let one color dominate while the others serve as an accent. There are a few classic do's and don'ts when it comes to color. For instance, have you ever seen colors that seem to vibrate when they're placed next to each other? The solution is to tone it down, literally, and there's a simple way to do it. Start with one color and try adjusting its lightness, darkness, or saturation. Sometimes a little contrast is all your color palette needs. Readability is an important factor in any design. Your colors should be legible, engaging, and easy on the eyes. Sometimes that means not using color, at least not in every little detail. Neutral colors like black, white, and gray can help you balance your design, so when you do use color, it really stands out. Every color sends a message. It's important to consider the tone of your project and choose a color palette that fits. For example, bright colors tend to have a fun or modern vibe. Desaturated colors often appear more businesslike. Sometimes it just depends on the context. You'd be surprised how flexible color can be. You can find ideas for color schemes in all kinds of interesting places, from advertising and branding to famous works of art. You can even use a web resource to browse color palettes or generate your own. Even experienced designers take inspiration from the world around them. There's nothing wrong with finding something you like and making it your own. Everywhere you look, there's color, color, and more color. It can be intimidating to use it in your work, but it doesn't have to be. Just keep experimenting and remember what you've learned about color theory. Soon, choosing great-looking colors will feel like second nature. We hope you enjoyed learning the basics of color. Check out the rest of our design topics, including typography.
Okay, so hopefully you guys enjoyed that. I love watching that. I love color. And it's just something that, again, really want you to keep in the back of your head. Not the back, maybe like the middle to the front of your mind as you start working through your projects this week. Because part of everything that you're going to be doing in this class is you're going to have to be writing a little essay that explains why you made the decisions you made. So if you're going to use purple, we don't want you to say, well, I used purple because I like it. We want you to explain, why did you use purple? Because this is a product that's energetic and lively. And purple is a color that, emotes those emotions for, blah, blah, blah. And again, you might be thinking, well, gosh, why do I have to do this? I know why I picked it. And again, what we're really trying to help you get in the habit of is when you're presenting designs, particularly package designs, but any design to clients, you want to be able to explain to them your rationale behind why you did it so that they can go, okay, because if you're trying to convince them to make a change from something that they may be doing that you know isn't working correctly, you need to make sure that you have done the research and you have the facts that support that. So the little essays that we're going to be doing every week with our projects are really preparing you on and getting you comfortable with how you're going to explain your designs when you pitch them to a client. Okay, because again, you want to make sure that you're presenting it in a very knowledgeable way that they know, well, Michelle didn't just pick this because Michelle likes it. You know, she picked it because she is a really well-trained designer. And that's what all of you guys are going to be. Okay, so, all right. So the next thing that I really want to talk about tonight, and this is our last topic, is typography. And like I said at the beginning of the lecture, color and typography are going to be the two biggest tools you use as a designer. So I really, especially in package design, I really, really, really want to encourage everybody to explore typography. Because you have such little space to work with, you're not going to have, you know, tons of room for images. You're not going to have room to put big, huge graphics that might communicate something. So you want to try and figure out, well, what can I combine to really communicate the message that I'm trying to communicate in a really small area? Think about like a ketchup packet. It's so teeny, right? It's like 1 inch by 2 inches. So you don't have that much real estate to work with. So if you can combine type, color, all into one graphic and get it on that little 2x1 ketchup packet, well, there you go. Like now you're really on to why these play important roles in design and specifically in package design. Just like color, typography can convey emotions and feelings just as effectively. So I always get a little bummed out when I look at projects and people have just, you know, kind of picked Arial or something. And if there's a really good reason why you picked Arial, then great, you know. But it's, again, one of the most important tools that we can use as designers is typography. And it's one of the most underutilized. Okay, so I know you guys could probably tell I'm a huge type fanatic. I love it so much. I wish I was better at it, but I love it. We're going to watch one more quick little video here that introduces.
Typography. It's everywhere we look. In the books we read, on the websites we visit, even in everyday life, on street signs, bumper stickers, and product packaging. Simply put, typography is the style or appearance of text. It can also refer to the art of working with text, something you probably do all the time if you create documents or other projects for work, school, or yourself. Typography can be an intimidating subject, but it doesn't have to be. You only need to know a little to make a big difference in the stuff you do every day. So let's get started. First, some common types of fonts and what you need to know about them. Serif fonts have little strokes called serifs attached to the main part of the letter. Because of their classic look, they're a good choice for more traditional projects. They're also common in print publications, like magazines and newspapers. Sans serif fonts don't have that extra stroke, hence the name, which is French for without serif. This style is considered more clean and modern than serif fonts. Also, it tends to be easier to read on computer screens, including smartphones and tablets. Display fonts come in many different styles, like script, black letter, all caps, and just plain fancy. Because of their decorative nature, display fonts are best for small amounts of text. For example, titles and headers, and more graphic-heavy designs. In a way, fonts have their own language. They all have something to say beyond the words on the page. They can come across as casual or neutral, exotic or graphic. That's why it's important to think about your message and pick a font that fits. Some fonts come with extra baggage, like Comic Sans, Curls, Papyrus, and many more. There's nothing particularly wrong with these fonts. They just have a certain reputation for being outdated and overused. If you find yourself tempted by them, think twice and consider using something else. There are many fonts with a similar look and feel that are less likely to detract from your message. When deciding which fonts to use, less is more. It's best to limit yourself to 1 or 2 per project. If you need more contrast, try repeating one of your fonts in a different size, weight, or style. This trick is practically foolproof for creating interesting combinations that work. You've probably heard the saying, opposites attract. Well, the same is true for fonts. Don't be afraid to combine font styles that are different but complementary, like sans serif with serif, short with tall, or decorative with simple. This can be challenging at first, but don't despair. Look to other designs for inspiration, and soon you'll get the hang of it. Maybe you've heard terms like kerning, leading, tracking, and hierarchy. For those with more experience, these concepts are essential for creating professional-looking designs. As a beginner, you don't need to know everything about these terms, just enough to inform your work and help you talk about design with more confidence. Hierarchy is used to guide the reader's eye to whatever is most important. In other words, it shows them where to begin and where to go next, using different levels of emphasis. Establishing hierarchy is simple. Just decide which elements you want the reader to notice first, then make them stand out. High-level items are usually larger, bolder, or different in some way. Remember to keep it simple and stick to just a few complementary styles. Leading is the space between lines of text, also known as line spacing. If you're not sure how much line spacing to use, don't fret. The default is usually fine. The goal is to make your text as comfortable to read as possible. Too much or too little spacing can make things unpleasant for the reader. Tracking is the overall space between characters, sometimes called character spacing. Most programs let you condense or expand this depending on your needs. In some designs, you might adjust your tracking to create a certain artistic effect. It can also help you fix fonts that are poorly spaced to begin with. Kerning is the space between specific characters. Unlike tracking, it varies over the course of the word because each letter fits together differently. Some fonts have what we call bad kerning, making certain letters look improperly spaced. If a font you're using has bad kerning, it's best to cut your losses and choose something else. Well-crafted text can mean the difference between an ordinary project and an extraordinary project, even if you're just getting started with design. All it takes is an interest in typography, and you'll start to notice more, see more, and be able to do more in your own work. We hope you enjoyed learning the basics of typography.
Okay, so again, just a little more about typography. And hopefully you guys are kind of seeing how color and typography are really used beyond just you know, I'm going to pick this so that my Word document is readable. It's because they're one of, again, the most useful tools we'll use as designers to communicate. To go a little bit more into typography, and they, went through this in the video, but there's really 5 reasons why it's so important. And again, why I'm spending a little bit more time on this tonight is because, again, when it comes to package design and the limited space we have, we want to make sure that we're using every element to its fullest. That if we're going to have text on something, that we make sure that that text really becomes a design element. Because typography, it attracts and holds the audience's attention. And just like color, it can convey a certain mood or feeling. We look at this and we see rhinos rocks. Now imagine if that was like just in like Arial bold. Would it really communicate the same thing? No, it wouldn't. And that's why when it comes to packaging, exploring your typography can, again, really enhance your design in a very small space. Typography, again, it's reader friendly. And this is something we have to think about a lot in package design, is there are certain elements that are required to be on every packaging. If you're dealing with food, you're required to have nutritional information and ingredient lists. If you're dealing with beverages, you're required, or alcohol, to have the alcohol content. But again, since there's usually very limited space on a package, it's so important that we're picking fonts that are going to be readable at a small size. So again, if we're working on a Tabasco sauce package, and that's one of the ones you can choose from in this class, and we're going to make our ingredient list, but we use a really skinny font like Arial Narrow. Well, when that goes down to like a 8 points, there's no way people are going to be able to read it. And what's the point? If it's not readable, why are we putting it on there? And you might think, well, it's not that important, but it is important, because think about it. When we're dealing with food, a lot of times people have food allergies. So they need to be able to see what ingredients are in this product so that they can eat it safely. And again, when it's at that small of a size, what may happen is, let's say I'm allergic to coconut, and I'm trying to make sure that this candy bar I want to buy doesn't have coconut in it. And if I look at the ingredient list and I can't tell, well, I'm probably not going to like just roll the dice and buy it and eat it. I'm going to put it away and go find a candy bar that I can read the ingredient list. So again, it's really important, especially in package design, when you're going to be dealing with small print, that it's reader friendly. Okay. Another is that it establishes hierarchy. And they touched on this in the video, is a lot of times, again, somebody just think about if I'm walking down, the grocery store aisle, and I'm looking at all these boxes. And what's going to grab my attention first? It's going to be what's the biggest and boldest, and maybe not just in color, but in the typography itself. So a lot of times it communicates to people really quickly. I can look at a box and I'm like, what is Michelle's blocks? I'm like, oh, Michelle's blocks, it's blocks, because go down in the hierarchy, and maybe what's the biggest is the name of the product, what's underneath it is what the product actually is, and so on and so forth. So establishing that hierarchy, it's just another tool we use to communicate with people, and help them say, okay, we want you to notice this first, and then we want you to notice this second, and this third, and so on and so forth. I have one more. This is, I think, the last video that I wanted to share with you guys. but it really shows how a lot of packages use typography to communicate. And I love these examples because we may not ultimately think about it. When we look at, just again, this back to nature, you know, instead of the A, they have a little leaf. And you can see they're using a font that has a really rustic, kind of organic, handmade feel to it. And it already is communicating to people, hey, this is something that's maybe handmade, it's organic, it's earthy, it's natural. And all of that is from the font. I didn't have to put on this box, handmade, nature's best organic ingredients. I mean, think about if all of those words were on there, how quickly this package could become really crowded and ineffective. And you can see again with the hierarchy, multi-grain flax is the largest font on here, our text on here, because that's what we want people to read. That's like the main ingredient. And it's seeded flatbread crackers. And then we have the ingredients that are still down here. They're small and they're readable. But again, you can see it goes larger to large to medium. And then we have even smaller text up here. So we're setting this hierarchy in the package so that people can really kind of look at it and be like, oh, you're sending a lot of kind of subconscious cues to them to help make them not have to think too much. Before they even read, you know, anything else, I'm like, oh, this is a nice leafy organic product. I haven't read anything else about it. Okay, so let's watch this one too.
We're surrounded by type all the time. So how does type stand out in a busy environment? Specifically, how does typographic hierarchy work? Hierarchy is the way type is organized in order to indicate levels of importance to the viewer. Within the world of packaging, there are two different kinds of hierarchy. One is, how well does the entire package separate itself from the other packaging all around it, and how does it project its individual personality? The second level of hierarchy is, within each package, are there clear levels of typographic hierarchy indicated by size, weight, color, orientation, and adjacency? Those graphic techniques are the designer's tools. Kettle chips try to distinguish themselves as healthier chips. The roughness of the typography suggests that the chips are less processed. The logo stands out because of its size, its prominent position at the top, and because the big swoosh of the K over the T creates action. The logo's irregular baseline and woody texture suggest that the chips are organic. Pop chips, on the other hand, have a slick, fun, modern look. The O's of the logo are popping out just like the name. The I is implied by the space between the H and the P and by the big dot over the imaginary I. The word pop is bigger. It's literally popping. It's a modern minimalist approach to a chip, distinctly different in this category. The typographic hierarchy on the package is clear based on the size of the secondary pieces of text, all natural, the variety of pop chips, and the descriptions all the way at the bottom, which are smaller and therefore less important. Here's a good example of two companies selling the same product in entirely different ways. Tire Tread Licorice takes a typographically aggressive approach. The name of the product, the type style of the product, and the actual product all send the same strong message. On the other hand, Newman's Own Licorice takes a calm approach, using traditional elements and an old-fashioned type style. The hierarchy is created by size. The word licorice is the most important, then the image, then the other descriptive information, black licorice, twists, made with organic sugar. I love looking at wine labels because there's so much typographic diversity and personality. These labels are both striking and memorable, but for different reasons. The Rojo Mojo label uses a minimalist geometric sans serif. Note that the R and the M don't even have a stem. The designer looked at the name and envisioned 4 O's connected by the J. The Shiraz and the black text here below the name are obviously secondary. It's a tight and inevitable construction. It's all about the type. It stands out because of its simplicity and strong contrast. On the other hand, this is memorable because of the overlay of the brush-written T on a very formal Roman T and the sideways orientation of the rest of the label. It's asymmetrically aligned. Bodega and Tamari are flush left. Reserva is centered, and the slash of the Malbec line aligns with the serif of the big red T. Other type is tucked into the footer serif of the T. It's dynamic. It's mixing several typefaces beautifully. With the cropped off letters, you feel as if there's action beyond the edges of the label. They're both graphically strong, but completely different from one another. All of these packages in their own way strive to stand out from the competition and to define themselves by appealing to a different demographic through their use of typography and design. To recap, hierarchy is the visual organization of text. Employ techniques to make your design stand out. Show the viewer what to read first, second, third, and so on. Creating hierarchy is simple. Size and weight matter most, color and contrast, and position in the composition matter too. Creating visual prominence and setting priorities for the viewer is something you can do.
A membership to lynda.com unlocks this entire
Okay, so again, I know you're probably like, geez, Michelle, you're really hitting home on this typography thing. But I really wanted to show again, specifically, make sure we're really going to pay attention to it in this class. Now, doesn't mean you're going to be doing all these custom logo fonts and everything. No, I mean, we don't have time for that. This class is only 4 weeks long. But there's a lot of fonts that we can find that will be able to communicate in the same type of like style. So I really like to, again, point out how important typography is, because I see it over and over again, and I sometimes fall into the trap too, that we're busy and we're like, okay, we'll just use this one, that looks good. And it's again really typically a missed opportunity when it comes to design and packaging, when you're not exploring typography as one of your main elements of the overall design. I wanted to show this too because you can see how a lot of logos and a lot of brands use typography in different ways. Whoops. Use typography in different ways to communicate. And these are all really simple logos. There's just words. They don't have a lot of icons with them or a lot of decoration, but each of them has their own unique identity when you look at it. 3M, that's really bold and strong, which that's what they want people to think about. They're reliable. They're going to last a long time. They're strong. That's what that font, conveys in their logo. When you look at Barbie, it's really fun and curly and kind of like somebody wrote it by hand, because Barbie is something that people interact with and they want to do it when they're playing and having a good time. So you're going to kind of touch on a little bit of exploring this kind of stuff for your package this next 4 weeks. Again, I don't want anybody to worry like, oh my gosh, I only have 4 weeks and am I going to have to do a logo and do all of this? Like, no, I do understand. But I want you guys to definitely, again, explore it and start putting thought into it. Because one of the goals in this class is to really be able to start communicating about design through design thinking. Okay. So that is, color and typography. And why we spend so much time on it for week 1 is because your assignment in week 1 is going to be to do a mood board. And you might have done one before already in class, or if you already are working as a designer. But I want to go ahead and go over it tonight, so you understand what the assignment is. And then tomorrow in our lecture, we are going to build our own mood board. So a mood board, it's really an arrangement of images, typography, shapes, textures. Think Pinterest. Think about how, you can surf Pinterest and you just start collecting a lot of images about maybe, the way you want to decorate your living room, or, cars that you like a lot. But the key word to a mood board is the word mood, okay? And we're going to walk through this really in detail tomorrow. Is the purpose of your mood board is to convey a feeling, okay? Its purpose is not to show pictures of what you're designing, okay? When we look at this mood board, we see the color palette and we see the typography and the logo and all of these different elements that convey a very specific feeling. To me, this is classic. It's, something that's a little elegant. It's rooted in tradition. It's subtle, but it's also a little whimsical with some of the type things that it's showing here. I don't actually know what this is. I can look here at the logo and it's for an artisan confectioner, which is like a candy maker. But none of these pictures are of candy, okay? And it's one of the biggest mistakes that I see when people are doing mood boards is they'll say, okay, well, I'm going to pick the wine bottle. And on their mood board, they have a lot of pictures of grapes and people drinking wine. Well, I mean, maybe that might work, but again, you're trying to set the mood for the adjectives. Okay, so if you want your wine to be sophisticated and elegant, make sure that the elements you're picking, that's what that's what it represents. Again, nowhere on here do we see anything about sugar or candy, but through these images, we see maybe these are shapes or something that, again, we understand this is maybe a very subtle, elegant, traditional type of a product. Okay, and again, we're going to go through a lot of this in big detail tomorrow. I look at this next mood board, and to me, I see this. It's fun, it's happy, it's energetic, it's bright, it's explorative, simple, clean. And I don't know what it is, but that's what it makes me feel, okay? And that's because of the elements. Now, you can see here the icons they're using. That's a farm, that's like a building, here's Band-Aids and cameras. I don't necessarily know what this is for, but I can tell you, I feel like it's a very fun, playful brand that maybe is trying to be inclusive and of a lot of things, embrace across all different, maybe platforms or all different types of cultures. And it's rooted in these icons to communicate without words. So, again, I don't know exactly what this is, but that's the mood that I get when I look at it. So you want to start keeping that in mind when you think about before, you sit down to do your mood board this week, and before we really get into it tomorrow, think about, okay, remember, mood. That's the key thing that we're trying to convey, is the mood of something. We're not trying to tell people, hey, this is what this package design is for. It's for a bottle of wine. They know it's for a bottle of wine because that's what they make. You're trying to convey to them, hey, this is the message, this is the mood that we want to communicate to your audience about the wine. Typically, mood boards are made up of really similar things. You always have a color palette. You always have some type treatments. You explore things like shapes, patterns, textures. If you're doing something digital for like a dashboard or an app, you might explore button styles and then images. So you can see here, we have, our color palettes. They're exploring some different types of icons here and the different shapes. We have some type exploration down here and within these, and how icons can be used with type. And the same for here too. There's all these different elements that we always include: color palette, typography, imagery, and sometimes textures and shapes. So those are the things that we really want to focus on when we're building our mood boards this week. And again, I don't want anyone to feel too overwhelmed. I know I'm throwing a lot of information at you tonight. Please remember, this is just a process. We're going to walk through everything step by step every week. I'm just trying to kind of give you a little heads up and get, our brains thinking in the right direction. So the last thing I want to share with you guys is tonight is Adobe Type Kit. And what Type Kit is, oops, hold on. Sorry, it's not time for that one yet. Type Kit is a tool that we use with Adobe. Everyone has access to it while you're at IU. And it's really a resource for you to go and explore different fonts. So it's fonts.adobe.com. Okay, so if you enter that into your browser, you sign in with the account that you have through IU, and you're into Adobe's font library. Okay, so we can type in things like energetic fonts. Okay, it may not come up with anything now. So if I come back out here and I go ahead and let's get started, or we come to kind of our search tool and we can go ahead and filter. So let's say we're going to be doing something for the wine bottle and we know we want it to be minimal, modern, appeal to a very simple target audience, and not be too loud. So I know I might want to do a sans serif font. So I can use my filters over here on the left to narrow it down so that I'm not actually having to filter, like look through every single font. I can do things like, okay, I know that I want it to be maybe a thicker one, or I want it to be a little bit thinner. And it'll go ahead and filter all of these different fonts that we can use. So when you're going to be doing your mood board this week, this might be somewhere that you're going to really spend a lot of time, because you need to have access to any font that you use. And I know that a lot of times you sit down and you're like, well, I'm going to have to use the ones on my machine. But again, the great thing about having the Adobe subscription, which all of you guys have, is that you have access to this Type Kit or Adobe fonts. And all I have to do is when I find one that I want to use, let's say I want to use this all-round Gothic, I just click on it, okay, and it shows me all of the different weights that it comes in, all the different styles, and I'm like, awesome. I have a lot of options here with this one font. Maybe this is going to be my header font, this is going to be my text font, whatever. All I have to do is up here in the right corner, it says activate 10 fonts. All I do is turn that on, and now I have access. So if I come in here to like Photoshop, what Adobe then does is puts that font into my programs for me so that I can use it. So if I go ahead and create a new, let's go ahead. Now I will give everybody a heads up that sometimes if you have Photoshop or Illustrator or something open and you're working with Adobe fonts and you activate something, it may not always be in your font list. So you'll have to like go and restart Photoshop. So you just close it and then open it back up. So now if I come here and I have, you know, here's my character window. And if I just type in all, whoops, all, sorry, what was this called? All round Gothic. Whoop, it's not in here yet. Hold on. And again, sometimes it can take a little bit of time to refresh. I might have to just restart this. So don't be afraid, you know, if this happens, to just, let's try it again. You might have to restart Photoshop. You may have to give it a minute or two to catch up. You know, we can try another one here. Let's try this. Scholar. Okay, so it says it activated the 12 fonts. If I come back out here, let's see if this then pops up. And here it is. So it activated all of it for me. So sometimes it could take just a little time. You might have to restart things every now and again, and that's okay. But that's all you have to do is, again, if you find something in here that you like, you just, whoops, have to come in, click on it, and activate that font, and then you'll have access to it in your character windows here, okay? And you can see which ones I've added through Typekit because there's the little Typekit symbol there. So I wanted to, again, show you guys that just to make sure that you know, okay, because sometimes you can feel frustrated if maybe you only have a few fonts on your machine and none of them are really ones that you want. And this is where you want to go to explore more. I will definitely kind of discourage people from doing things like from defonts.com or all of those free font websites. First of all, a lot of times they can be corrupt and they can harm your machine if you download them. A lot of times too, they have bad kerning, they have bad leading, they don't have all of the numbers and symbols and the alphabet or for your keyboard that you may want to use. So really steer away from doing anything like, you know, don't type into your browser free fonts, okay? And going to a font, you know, a site like this and being like, okay, awesome, I'm going to use one of these. These always aren't the best fonts to work with. And again, a lot of times they can kind of do more harm to your computer, to your machine. So stick with fonts.adobe.com and you can find and explore the same type of cool fonts, but you know that you're getting ones that are going to have proper spacing, have proper kerning, that aren't going to be corrupt. And they have really fun ones too. They have decorative fonts. They have hand ones. So all of the categories that you might find on some of these free font websites that tempt you into downloading their free, not good fonts, you can find in Adobe Typekit. Okay, so this is going to be your friend this week. I know, and I'm sorry, I start clicking through, and I love looking at them, but so I have one more really short video to share with you guys tonight, and that'll be the end of our lecture. Like I said, tomorrow, what we're going to walk through is we're going to go through the discussion, your assignment, and then your assessment. Your assessment this week is a quiz. So we're good there, but we're going to just kind of touch on it to make sure everyone knows how to work through a quiz, and where you can find the answers. But I promise tomorrow, no lecturing. We're going to just be doing the assignment. But I wanted to make sure we took the time tonight because, you know, you guys are now into these 200 level classes. So you're kind of going to be upping what you're designing. And the expectation that you're using the design fundamentals and the design skills that you've been learning and put them into practice here is really very important. So again, I don't want anyone to freak out like, whoa, what are we gonna have to do? It's all really fun, okay? And we're gonna take it step by step. So let's go ahead and watch this last thing. Surprise, surprise, it's about typography. So again, if you've noticed a theme for tonight, it's that I really want everyone to try and explore the power of typography in their package designs for all 4 weeks, okay? And really understand how it communicates and how we can use it, particularly in these small spaces, to really communicate to our audience. Okay.
Being a pilot in the Air Force is freedom, service. I'm proud to serve my country. I love my job. Something incredible happens when you become a designer that I liken to gaining a superpower. Most people are walking around the world thinking about what they want to eat for lunch or what they're doing at work, but designers are walking around the world looking at everything and asking, why does it look the way it does and work the way it does, and who designed it? And the great part about this ability is that as a designer, I can do something about it. The obnoxious part about this ability is that it's happening all the time. I can never shut it off. And for me, this is happening particularly with typography. Typography is the visual arrangement of designed letters, or type, in space. And type exists everywhere. Even if you find yourself in the middle of the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, where I'm from, at Fayette Historic Town Site and Park, where I found myself in the summer of 2012. I was there on a whim, and what Fayette is it used to be a town where they smelted iron ore that was mined. What that means is it's made into a more refined version before it gets shipped off to be made into steel. And so this was a company town. It was a really cool, bustling place where they did this for about 20 years at the end of the 1800s until it proved unprofitable, and the whole town kind of trickled out, and now it's a ghost town. It's been really well preserved as this architectural kind of framework that now you can go visit, and they have a cool museum there that has artifacts from the town. You can see how people used to live there. And in this museum, they have these white framed pieces of paper that were kind of up against a wall, which from a distance looked entirely unremarkable. But as I got closer to them, I was totally floored. This was the most beautiful handwriting I had ever seen in my entire life. It was graceful, and it was swooping, and it was swift, and it was fantastic. And suddenly, like a ton of bricks, my design superpower caught up with me, and I knew in my heart of hearts that I needed to make this into a typeface. The problem was I had never actually done this before. I had worked as a graphic designer and used a lot of type, but hadn't made a lot of type. And so I knew there were a couple things that I was going to have to consider moving forward if this is a project I wanted to do. So the first thing to know, I needed to know, is that a typeface is different than a font. Now, most people use these interchangeably, but there actually is a difference. A typeface is a series of letters that are designed to belong together. So Bodoni is a typeface. Now, Bodoni bold italic is a font, which is a specific group of letters within a typeface. So fonts make up typefaces in the same way that chapters make up a book. All typefaces are made up of letter forms. Letter forms is the individual design of any one letter. And when you're designing these letters, you have to consider if you want it to be a serif or a sans serif typeface. So what serifs are these like great little feet that exist on the bottom of letter forms, like you can see on the century F. And sans serif type, sans from the French word meaning without, doesn't have these little wings or feet, and so they read a bit more like table legs. Then there's script typefaces, which is made to look a bit like cursive. And so when you design the letter forms, you have to add this cool little tail onto what you're designing so that they can connect with each other and read like cursive. And I knew, because I was working from cursive handwriting, that I needed to design a script. So I thought, I've got this, right? I'm just gonna trace the letters and it's gonna work. It really didn't. So I had this, and this would have worked really well for historical preservation, but what went on is that these letters weren't even enough to actually work as a typeface, and so then I was kind of back to the drawing board going, all right, how am I gonna actually do this? And so I thought about how other type designers had done this before me, and many of them start with the letter A. Now I have to preface, I absolutely love lowercase a's, which is like a little weird and obsessive. I realize saying this in front of a very large group of people, but lowercase a's are fun, they're humble, they're in just about everything. And so I started by tracing this A, which looked really funky, and the second A looked really funky, and probably somewhere until like the 39th A also looked really funky. But when I finally got to this A that I loved, I knew it was a really great place to start, and I knew why other people started there. Because once you have that letter form, you can use that to make an O and a G and a P and a Q and a D and a B, because they all share that same base shape. Similarly, once you design an N, the M and the U come really quickly, as does the W and an H, because they borrow each other's forms. Now, once you've designed these letters, it's important to space them correctly. That's just as important. And so kerning is the space between any two letters. And letters that are close together are tightly kerned, and letters that are far apart are widely kerned. And for Fayette, which is what I call the typeface, super creative name, I know, these have to be properly kerned so that it maintains this illusion of cursive and that it reads really nicely. Because if things are too tightly kerned, then it turns into this crunchy mess. And if it's too widely kerned, then you've completely ruined the illusion of cursive. And kerning is important not just for believability or legibility, but because it can actually change what it is you're trying to say. And my first lesson in bad kerning was not in art school, but was actually in the 7th grade with Mr. Stewart. This guy loved bird watching. So he got up and he wanted to share this with us. So he got up on the board and he wrote down the name of a bird called the yellow-bellied flicker. But he wrote it really quickly and his letter spacing was just slightly off, and this completely changed the message. This is a true story. Other things to consider is about leading. And leading is the space between any two lines of typed text. And it's called leading because when type was made of like movable metal, they literally put chunks of lead between to designate that space. And for Fayette, this was really important because I had to deal with ascenders and descenders. So what an ascender is it's the part of the letter form that comes up and over the X height, which is the top of lowercase letters. And then there's the descenders, which come down below what's called the baseline, which is where lowercase letters sit. And so if something is too tightly leaded, then you end up with these like sword fighting ascenders and descenders, and that's generally bad news bears. Other things to consider is that when you're designing a typeface, it's not just 26 letters and 10 numbers. You have to deal with things called glyphs, which are all of the symbols that you have to have in a typeface, like the @ sign and number sign and parentheses, right? So that your typeface is actually usable. So there's at least like one person in this audience right now who's like, good for you, lady. You made a typeface. What's the point? There's one of you, I know it. What's the point? The point is that typography is important not just for designers and type nerds like myself, but for everyone in this audience, because everything you ever read is in some kind of typeface. And all typefaces are designed to say something specific. And so when something is typed in a typeface, then what is said is influenced by how it is set. And I call this a kind of visual inflection. So just like when we speak, our tone of voice gives meaning to the words we're trying to say, so does type. So if I were to say, I hope you all have a great time today at TEDx, you know I mean that because of the tone of my voice, right? But if I were to say, I hope you have a great time at TEDx, you know that I don't actually mean that because of the inflection of my voice, and type works really similarly. Type can be authoritative. It can be honest. It can be organic. Type can say, I'm friendly, or I'm childlike. If you're still not buying this, let's imagine that you're going out on a date and you need to get a babysitter for your child. So you go online and you look up babysitter and this shows up. Okay? Set in Baskerville, it's cool, it's calm, it's professional, it's collected. This is probably a person that you'd give a call and say, hey, can you watch my kid tonight? But let's say that this situation has changed slightly. So you get online, you look up babysitters, and this shows up. This is probably not the person you want to leave your kid with. So in this way, type should never be an afterthought because it can persuade and evoke and help us make choices consciously or unconsciously. And so Fayette is a nice typeface, and I'm obviously like a tiny bit biased, but it's not for everything. It works really well for things like historical fiction or museum design or love letters or wedding invites because it speaks of a time of precision and a time gone by, but it's not what you'd write like your master's thesis in. And that, truthfully, that wasn't the point, right? I didn't design it to be the end all, be all of typefaces. I designed it to say something about a place that used to exist and doesn't anymore, and a person who had a voice and doesn't anymore, and that swiftness and that beauty, in some way trying to preserve that and carry a tiny bit of that from the past to the present and hopefully into the future. And so for all of you now, having heard this talk, you now absorbed a little bit of this design superpower, which means when you leave, you're gonna go look at all of the type around you and you're gonna wonder who made it and why it looks the way it does and what it means. And you're also gonna see bad kerning now everywhere. I'm so sorry. But you're all gonna be able to go into your chosen professions and handle type a little better than you could before, because you can think about what you wanna say and how you want to say it. And you can make conscious, deliberate decisions about the medium of your message, not just from the words you choose, but from the type you choose. Thanks.
Okay, so that's all I have for you tonight. Again, I know we spent a lot of time on color and typography. And it's just because, again, I want everybody to really start thinking about how this is going to be used in the package design you're going to create this module. So, you know, when you're looking around your house over the next week, you know, take a look at what type and the colors that are on some of the things in your house. If you're at the grocery store, which I don't think a lot of us are going to this week now these days, but if you find yourself there, you know, take a look, see how other packages are using color and typography to really communicate the product and the message for that brand. But I think you'll be surprised. I sit here all the time and look at a water bottle, and I'm like, it's really interesting that they decided to use those colors. Was it because of this or because of that? And I do it with everything, my dog treats, you know, the labels on my clothes. It's always so interesting to see what type and what colors are used on tags that are on clothes. So just really kind of start getting your brain thinking and looking at those types of things and trying to be, you know, answer some of those questions about why they might have used that, and kind of start thinking about maybe how you might want to use those elements in your projects this module. Okay, so tomorrow we're going to go over, again, just the work for this week, which are our discussions, our assignments, and our assessment. So hopefully you guys enjoyed tonight, and tomorrow we will be digging into all of this. So have a great night. Thanks so much. Bye.